Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our preseason power rankings. Today we're doing the Las Vegas Raiders, number 23. I feel like this is generally around where people have this team. We're now in the phase where we get to kind of the playoff hopefuls, right? Some of these teams made the playoffs last year. Some of these teams maybe, I don't know, had someone get fired halfway through the year and then performed way better after the interim head coach comes in and completely changes their culture. Just a random example. The Las Vegas Raiders, right? Now they still have that interim head coach, Antonio Pierce. How are they going to look with him at the helm? We're going to get into that. Are we optimistic? Are we positive? How do we feel about that Raiders culture at the moment?
I'm extremely optimistic. I am a big Antonio Pierce guy now. I think when your best player is saying, I won't play for you next year if you don't let him be our head coach next year, I think it speaks volumes to what he was able to do with that locker room. You see the clips and his speeches and the way teams are willing to run through walls for him. Very much in that same style of coach of Dan Campbell, of that locker room guy who's feels like one of the players almost, of like, I'm with you guys, and they're going to run through a wall for him. And when you think of Raiders football, it's kind of who you want a head coach. You want players who want to run, and you want a coach that players want to run through walls for, man. Especially with a guy like Davante Adams, who a lot of people thought he was gone after this offseason. He's even more hopeful about this season. So we'll have to see. I'm excited. I'm hopeful about Antonio Pierce. We'll see how it goes schematically, which we'll get into here shortly. But I think there's a reason to have a lot of hope about who's the head coach and who's at the helm.
Yeah, I think that, and everyone would agree, really. Antonio Pierce, why is he there? He's a culture guy, right? He's like one of the players. He was a former player. He won a Super Bowl with the Giants, right? He's someone that, like you said, embodies that Raiders culture, and that's why he's there. He's not there because he's some big X's and O's guy. He's there because the team loves him, and the team wants to play for him. But in order for a head coach who was more of a culture guy, like a Dan Campbell, to really work out, they have to be good at bringing in those guys that do know the X's and O's. And we're going to get into the offensive scheme.
I'm probably not quite as low on Getsy as you are. I don't think highly of him. But I will say I think there's a very good reason he was picked up and he got a job before Justin Fields did. I think Justin Fields really limited what he could call and what he wanted to call. Now, did he do a good job off that? No. He didn't do a good job play calling for Justin Fields. But I do think what he wants to run is limited by who Justin Fields is as quarterback.
I think the really big thing for me personally with Getsy was his inability to adjust to the talent that he had, right? Justin Fields can't read the field well. Okay, we all knew that. Everyone knew it coming out of college. Yet you still operate an offense that seems to be, at least in theory, read to read to read. Okay, read one wasn't open, go to the next guy. You read the inside linebacker and see that he's dropping exactly where the primary route is. Okay, go to the next one. And Fields couldn't do that. Fields couldn't do that at all. But you have to be able to adjust. And the fact is, even with Aaron Rodgers, it was still a very Davante Adams. Here is Davante Adams. Here's the read. The read's not open. Do something. Okay? It's everyone is going to run a route to get people away from the primary route. Hit the primary route. That doesn't work, really. When you have Aaron Rodgers, it might, because Aaron Rodgers can hit those routes that were originally decoys. Okay, but it seems too one route dependent, the entire offense of the now Raiders, that earlier was the Bears with DJ Moore, when it was Getsy on the Packers. He wasn't the OC, but it did seem very Davante dependent, you know? So yeah, I do have problems with that. I had a lot of problems with how he ran the offense in Chicago. Again, it's West Coast, but I mean, learn how to adapt to the player's talent. Please, he didn't do anything creative to maximize anyone. Those are the big issues there. He has familiarity with Davante Adams. I think that's a big thing that, really drew him to the job. But if you want to be a culture guy like a Dan Campbell, you have to be able to bring in the Ben Johnson, and they didn't do that at all.
Yeah, they didn't bring in Ben Johnson, no. But luckily, I think this team, on paper, wants to run the ball about 35 times a game. Like, I think that's what this team wants to do and is designed to do. So, hopefully, because Getsy does like to be in 12 personnel and those tight end sets, and they have a team that is actually really well suited to be in that. It's just a matter of the actual play design and the play calling for Getsy. Can he put it together with two quarterbacks who are better at reading the field than Justin Fields is, hands down. Like, it's not close. Maybe not better we'll see if they're better overall quarterbacks and Fields were. I think it's a low bar to be better, so that'll be the case there, but we will see. Yeah. I don't think there's a world where Getsy's like some good offensive coordinator. I think there's a world where with this offense, he's not awful like he was last year.
I think the good thing here, the RPO heavy, West Coast type of stuff can work, but you gotta have more to it, and he doesn't. Maybe that changes now. I don't see why it would now, and it didn't earlier, but maybe a quarterback that could go read to read makes it a lot better. It probably should. It's a better stylistic fit, but now you can't get bailed out by his athleticism either, which also felt like the main thing that made that Chicago offense work.
Well, that's the main thing that makes Justin Fields as a player work too. You know what I mean? So I do think the read to read is going to help. I don't think he's going to be some good to great offense coordinator at all. I think there's a world where he's not awful, and this offense is not awful and can work off this, which we'll talk about, should be really good defense. So let's get into it. Now let's get to the actual roster, and we'll start with that quarterback room. And this is one of the only true quarterback competitions in the NFL. If it is the only true quarterback competition in the league right now, between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Place your votes now. Me personally, I can say this for certain. I'm almost certain O'Connell's going to get the start just because he started last year. Pierce has familiarity with him. I'm pretty sure Pierce has already stated it's O'Connell's job to lose now.
No, he said O'Connell earned the right to compete for the job.
Okay. I'd still go O'Connell regardless. Yes, Gardner Minshew made a Pro Bowl last year. We'll put that in quotation marks. Okay, he had a good season filling in for Aaron Rodgers. Gosh, Anthony Richardson and this Colts offense.
Also worth mentioning, the offense that Steichen ran this is a way more watered down version of that. So it is very simple. It is very similar. So there is reason to believe, hey, Minshew knows how to operate these RPO heavy offenses. We run a lot of those same types of plays. So let's bring him on out of here, right? And I get the thought process. Aiden O'Connell has a year with Pierce, which means Pierce likes him more, but that doesn't really matter because he's not the offensive coordinator. He's not calling the offense. It's a very different offense from last year.
Right. I also just happen to like Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell was my 8th ranked quarterback last year. I had like a 4th to 5th round grade on him as a player, which is about where he went. And I think where this offense wants to be ideally, which is we want a point guard back there who literally just boom, quick pass, get it to Bowers, to Adams, yada, yada, yada. I think Aiden O'Connell can be that point guard in this offense. I don't think he makes a ton of mistakes. I don't think he's an overly impressive quarterback as he showed last year. But last year I thought he also had some games where he proved he can be a good field general, good system quarterback who can deal the football. And I think that's what this Raiders team needs. If you want a higher ceiling, I think Gardner Minshew's probably the guy. If you want a higher floor, which I think this team wants with who they have, Aiden O'Connell's the guy for me, and I would go O'Connell.
The thing is, Minshew has more playmaking ability, but the thing is, he doesn't have as much. He has. How do I describe this? I'm trying to think of the best way possible. He has Dak Prescott playmaking ability, which is good. That's good. Yes. But he acts like he has Mahomes' playmaking ability, and it just doesn't work.
Yes.
It doesn't work. Now, listen, there are some times where I see Minshew simply hit the open man, but sometimes the intrusive thoughts start winning with Minshew.
They do.
That's the big problem with him. So I understand why some people want to say, O'Connell goes in and wins this job. I like Minshew. I enjoy watching him. And I went into watching Raiders film this week thinking, oh, yeah, I'm expecting to like Minshew more. I'm expecting to go in and say Minshew is the better quarterback. But as I watched Aiden O'Connell play and the style of football he plays, I'm like, if they really do want to be this run-heavy offense and they want someone that can just throw on occasion, I think O'Connell is the better fit. Also a better leader for that locker room because, of course, the people already love him.
He was there for him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Another
I gotta say, O'Connell, I'm in agreement.
Another thing to mention, O'Connell's some of his best play was off play action. And if you're talking about, again, a run-heavy team, it's going to be a lot of play action.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to benefit O'Connell in the long run. If there's a world where O'Connell's like, where this offense is good, and O'Connell's like the 20th best quarterback in the league, I wouldn't be surprised. It's just like a good starter. Like that, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's kind of my projection for O'Connell coming out of college, personally.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to disagree. I mean, I wasn't a fan of Aiden O'Connell coming out of college, but I would gladly say I was proven wrong. I don't think he's a top 32 quarterback. I don't think he's a starting caliber quarterback, but neither is Minshew, right? And that's what he has to do. He has to beat out Minshew. They're not going to rely on him like he is a starting caliber quarterback, okay? Mm-hmm. He's going to be there, execute the offense, lead the team, that's all.
And so let's talk about the guys that he's going to be, the playmakers that we're talking about. And he's got some playmakers, man. I really like the skill position group. Starting with Davante Adams, of course. Still one of the best receivers in football.
Yeah.
One of the best route runners. Release, hands, you name it. He's just fantastic. There's not enough good things you can say about Davante Adams.
The release package, more than anything. I think that's still the most outstanding thing about his game. I think that's
Easily.
I think that's probably what he is best at. And I think he is the best in the league at releasing off the line of scrimmage because he has all these different diamond release. Then he follows that up with a completely different type. And then, I have a route that gives me this much time before I have to make my first break. Okay, I'm going to use the perfect release that lines up with that perfectly. And then, the tempo on this route is completely different. Okay, I'm going to use a much faster release that still rattles the opponent just as much. And just when you have that many different release packages in your bag, it really makes you tough to cover. And then add with that some really nuanced route running, able to manipulate defenders' leverage. That is how you really make one of the more dangerous receivers in the NFL.
And then you move to Jacoby Myers, who, coming over from New England last year, everyone thought of him much more as like he just plays the slot. And this team still had Hunter Renfrow on it. People were a little confused by the signing when it happened. And Jacoby Myers proved he can play a lot more in the slot. He can still play outside. He's still very effective in the slot. Still probably his best role. But when you could put Davante Adams in the slot. You could put Jacoby Myers outside. You can mix and match the two. He had a really good season last year.
Yeah.
And as a number 2 receiver, you're feeling fantastic about it.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, I did not expect that to pan out the way it did, that signing.
Me neither.
It absolutely worked. It absolutely worked. He was another guy, very nuanced route runner. Very nuanced. I, of course, like him more from the slot, like you said, but he did show some ability to play that Z role, and I think now they added some other people to play that slot role for him. I'm excited to see what Jacoby Myers can continue to do because of the hands, of course, reliable target. Of course, he's someone that can go out, separate, like I said, and he offers more speed than Davante at this current point. So that, I think, is the big thing. 2 very similar receivers, but they're just different enough.
And then we get to the wide receiver 3, who last year it ended up being Trey Tucker. I don't know how much that's going to be the case now with Michael Gallup in the building. Michael Gallup has had years of good play, really good play. And if he's your third receiver, you're feeling great.
I just don't think,
Also,
as of late, Gallup has been the guy that goes up, tries to catch the 50-50 ball, and it goes between his hands.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yep.
He's someone that you rotate in red zone situations. I don't love him as a 3. And I just mentioned a world where Jacoby Myers is the other outside guy, maybe the Z receiver. I think Trey Tucker being he's speedy, man. He got speed.
Speedy, man. Yeah.
And I think lining him up as the slot receiver or that third receiver, depending on what you want to do with these tight ends, I think that is probably the best outcome here.
I agree. And Trey Tucker has that connection working with Aiden O'Connell. They had a good connection uh, near the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Trey Tucker's probably the 3 as well. Then you got Jalen Guyton, who just a deep threat to have on the squad.
Nice
He's
depth piece. Nice depth
really
piece.
nice depth piece, and you're feeling great about this receiver room.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to move to the tight ends now. And the tight ends, I think, are kind of the highlight here for me, because this team is going to be in a lot of 12 personnel. Maybe not even the traditional 2 tight ends line up on the line of scrimmage. You've got Brock Bowers, their first-round pick this year. One of the best tight end prospects I've ever scouted, maybe the best. He is just... We're talking about who's going to play a wide receiver 3 role. It's going to be Brock Bowers. He's going to line up in the slot.
So tell me this. Are we willing to, on the depth chart, right, put this as... Or not just the depth chart. We've been making the graphics this entire time, right? During all these episodes. Of course, I've been the guy editing it on. For those of you that want a behind-the-scenes look, he's the guy who has been putting it together, right? And with each one, it's been 11 personnel, right? Every single team. We've done 11 personnel so far because, let's be honest, in the modern NFL, that's what teams are running. That is the main formation all these teams are running.
And it's the easiest way to get across the players that are important.
Are we willing to say that this is going to be the first time that we rock a 12 personnel? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so we're thinking 12 personnel here? Or are we even thinking of 21 personnel with Jakob Johnson? Because while we're talking about the tight ends, I want to mention the fullback here.
We might do that as well, man. Like it's gonna be a run heavy person.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be.
It's gonna be 12 or 20. There is going to be a 2 somewhere instead of a 1.
Yeah.
If you were to say right now, before we get into the specifics of these guys, are we thinking main personnel is 12 or 21?
My guess would be 12.
Okay.
Because
I'm not opposed.
I think Bowers is gonna be on the field one way or another a majority of the time.
Yeah.
And I think Mayer's also going to be on the field one way or another a majority of the time. And what I think is going to pan out, again, let's talk about Bowers real quick.
Yeah.
Again, as I said, one of the best, if not the best tight end prospect I've ever scouted. We are talking, this is Deebo Samuel in a tight end's body. Like this guy is impossible to tackle after the catch. He's a fantastic route runner, great hands, phenomenal receiving threat. He can block. He's the whole package. And he is going to play this team's big slot receiver role a lot. Like, we're talking about who the wide receiver 3 is. It's going to be Brock Bowers. He's also going to line up on the line of scrimmage when he needs to. You're going to line him up in the backfield. They're going to get him on jet sweeps. They're going to put the ball in the Brock Bowers' hands. It's going to be fantastic. And then there's going to be Michael Mayer, who's also going to get a ton of time on the field as the more traditional Y in-line tight end, a blocker, contested catch threat. Like, I love this duo of tight ends. I really
The fun thing, too, both of them make some plays after the catch. So now you got a weird situation of who lead blocks for who when you're doing that screen pass, right?
Yep.
And now you could even fake one lead blocking. Now, again, this is Luke Getsy, so I don't think he's going to.
It's Luke Getsy. He
won't do it. In fact, you might never see Michael Mayer get a target all season, for all we know. They might just only have him block. I have no idea. But it would be fun to see a potential, like, have Brock Bowers line up in the slot, then have some long developing play action, maybe. And when you're doing that long developing play action, maybe have a pulling guard go out in front of Bowers, who's now out on a bubble. You throw him the bubble screen, now you have Michael Mayer blocking for him, and then you have Brock Bowers going upfield with a pulling guard ahead and Michael Mayer blocking, and then you're able to run a very similar play once again, but this time you pump once to Bowers, and then Bowers goes ahead, blocks, now you have Michael Mayer catch it, and now it's the same exact type of, because they're both very interesting yak threats. Bowers is going to do more damage as a receiver, actually running routes and separating, but Mayer is going to do more of the dirty work, the tight end dirty work.
Yes, sir.
Again, if they had a good offensive coordinator, this is one of my offenses that I'm super excited to see. But because the coordinator is Luke Getsy, I'm just like,
That was going to be one of my questions for you. Like, let's say, we're talking about Antonio Pierce bringing in the X's and O guys like a Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson's the offensive coordinator for this team. How good do you think this offense is?
Oh my God! I mean, they don't have the quarterback, which sucks. But I'd still go ahead and say it becomes a top 10 offense. I mean, really.
Yeah, easily, I think. Yeah.
Again, the running game should work. We'll get into that. But they have a really interesting group of weapons. And I'm not just saying weapons as in, like pass catchers, but the ways that that Mayer is going to threaten teams just by being on the line of scrimmage because he is a really good blocker, and the ways that Brock Bowers is going to threaten teams as a slot receiver. You know, do you put a slot corner on him? Because if you put a slot corner on him, he's going to get bullied. Oh, we need to have like a Kyle Hamilton type of guy, a Brian Branch type of guy. Not many people have those players. And when you force Brian Branch or Kyle Hamilton to always go man-to-man with him, now you can't use Kyle Hamilton in all these other creative ways. And that really just throws a wrench in so many different defenses. Because, again, it's always going to be a pendulum shift between offense and defense. It always will be. But Bowers right now, what he is going to do, it might not be this year because rookie tight ends struggle. The offensive coordinator isn't very good. Maybe they won't use him right. But eventually Bowers is going to be part of the pendulum shift towards the offense in the sense that these slot corners that have been doing a really good job are going to have to get eradicated or get big, right? They're either going to have to become outside corners or get a lot bigger. Because if you have a Levy Wallace or a Mike Hilton in the slot, you're going to get bullied. And Mike Hilton is a really good slot corner unless he's guarding a big tight end. But when it's a big tight end, he's going to get bullied, right? You have to have a Kyle Hamilton. And I think offenses are really going in a direction that are going to force defenses to have a Kyle Hamilton, a Brian Branch.
Have those hybrid kind of players.
Exactly. And that, I think, is a really interesting thing here. How will an offense like this take advantage of that? That's what I want to see. Because you really focus on Kyle Hamilton coming down to play on a Brock Bowers. Now, that opens up lanes for a Jacoby Myers to go deep. And without Kyle Hamilton up there, who's going to guard him, right? You don't have many corners that are going stride for stride with him, right? To me, it's just a really interesting scenario we got here.
And then the third tight end worth mentioning, Harrison Bryant. Ideal third tight end is what I would say. The ideal guy. He's going to play more of that Y role too. Just thought I'd mention him. And then we'll move to the running backs, which we usually start with. But we were so excited about these skill position guys that
While we're talking about the running backs, I just want to mention really quick Jakob Johnson, who I guess fullback. I don't know how much Bowers is going to be lined up as an H, but they won't really need to line him up there because Jakob Johnson has been a great
He's been
blocker.
incredible.
Great blocker. I mean, a key reason that Josh Jacobs has been so successful, even when the offensive line isn't great, is because he either has tight ends that can block really well or he has a Jakob Johnson ahead of him. And again, Jakob Johnson, he's just been such a dominant force as a run blocker, as a lead blocker. He's going to be a key reason that running lanes are going to open up.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we'll move to these running backs. And a guy I'm really excited to watch behind this offensive line and Jakob Johnson and Zamir White. I liked him coming out of Georgia. And then the games we saw from him where they just fed him the rock. I mean, he's not a I'm going to make you miss. He's downhill. I'm going to hit you. You're going to hit me and I'm going to win type of running back. Yeah, I mean, big dude, bulky guy. I don't know if you've ever heard him talk, but I remember seeing an interview where he's like, yeah, little country twang to it. And he's just like, yeah, throwing hay bales in the off season at the farm. And I'm like, yeah, I want to give this guy the rock 30 times. Yeah, this is definitely the guy I want to give the rock 30 times. And I'm just excited to watch him. And then you've got Alexander Madison, who everybody was like, oh, new starting running back in the Vikings, and I don't know how they let that happen. He's much more of a complement piece to a running back room, which is good. He's here. Amir Abdullah, much more of the scat back type of guy, but I actually think the scat back is going to go to the rookie in Dylan Laub. He's a really good
I'm glad you said that because I was going to say a common line so far in these preseason previews, right? They have a type at running back. Yes. And it's these power runners. Lower the shoulder. Maybe not like the Derrick Henrys, but these runners that run tough. Even though they might not be.
It's not a lot of horizontal. It's north
exactly. It's north and south, exactly. And that's what you see Zamir White doing. That's what you see Alexander Madison doing. That's what you see Amir Abdullah doing. Okay? And they have an offensive line that really supports that type of movement. But yeah, I definitely agree. They have someone that could play the scat back role. I just don't think they care. In all honesty.
I do think when it comes to catching passes, Dylan Lobb is really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is. I think he makes the team because he's their piece doing that. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a world where he might make it above Abdullah because they have already Zamir White and
Yeah,
Alexander
that's
Mattison.
fair. That's fair. They're definitely deep there, and it would be nice to have that versatility. I've been saying a lot. The versatility out of the backfield is a very nice thing to have. At least someone that could do it. But Getsy doesn't really design plays for the running backs to get the ball. Maybe he starts doing that now. We'll see. To me, it seems like they're really going to prioritize these power runners, though. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if these are
Yes.
the three guys we really see getting playing time. The
And
O
again, I,
line.
I I do want to say real quick, I do think Zamir White is legit going to be like 20 to 25 carries a game.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he's going to be
And
off the field very
I
much.
think his production isn't really going to be as much. Oh, Zamir White is really trucking people to the ground. I think it's just going to be he's hitting the hole violently, and he has a violent group of hogs in front of him.
Mhm.
Okay, and
Fierce, violent group of
yeah,
hogs.
I want to get into them. I want to get into
Yes.
them here. Starting with the left tackle, Colton Miller. He's someone not the biggest name on earth for whatever reason, but he's someone that's been so good for so long
He's
now.
so good.
You know,
He's
ever
so
since he was
good.
taken round 1, 2018, he's been a good football player, man. He's been a good player, been getting it done as a pass blocker, but more than anything, it's what he does as a run blocker that has impressed me for so long now.
Yes, I mean, he's a franchise left tackle, simply put. I remember
Yeah.
when he was taken. I thought it was a lot of people thought it was early at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
he had a really rough rookie season. Like he was not good,
Mm-hmm.
and after that, it's just been sky high.
Yeah.
Sky's the limit for him. One of the best left tackles in football. Not worried about that at all. And now we'll get to guards slash center here because they drafted Jackson Powers Johnson in the second round of this draft, who one of
Mm-hmm.
the top centers on the board, of course, but he's listed as a left guard, and I do think he starts his career as the left guard for this team. They're going to let Andre James come in and play center until otherwise, which I do think Powers Johnson does play center eventually for this team. I
Yeah,
don't know if
dude.
this year or next season, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he does. Jackson Powers Johnson's awesome. He's a people mover. He's he has a really high floor as a player. Maybe not the highest ceiling in the world. I will say that. I don't think the ceiling. I don't think he's some insane uber athlete. But from a technique standpoint, from a strength standpoint, he comes into this game, comes into the league. It's a high level, not high level, but as a starter, as a high
No,
floor starter.
listen, I think he comes in and he is a high level guy.
Yeah, high level.
JPJ.
There you go.
I think he's someone in a zone blocking scheme does a phenomenal job. I think you really struggle to find a better zone blocking interior offensive lineman
Yep. Yep.
available. The only thing is, and this is where I kind of want to ask a question: is this duo gap? Like, what do we think is going
And
on
that's
here? I
that's
think it's
where
going to be everything.
I think it's going to be everything. I do think it's going to be a lot of duo. I think it's going to be a lot of them working off of each other.
Then that's a little bit of a question of Jackson Powers Johnson is still very good at that,
Yes.
but that's not maximizing him.
No, it's not.
You know?
It's not. And that comes into like again, I don't think he's I think he's a don't get me wrong. Jackson Powers Johnson's a really good athlete. You got to be a good athlete
Oh yeah.
to be like him in the NFL.
Mhm.
It's just like, I don't think he's some insane athlete like some of these other guys you see. And we'll see how, like I think he's going to be fine in whatever they put him at.
Yeah.
But yes, zone blocking's where he fits best.
Well,
And
yeah, and it's because of how good he is at getting up to that second level. His
Yes.
angles while blocking, I think his angles of pursuit. And
that's a great way of saying it there. He's just such a smart football player. He
Mhm.
knows exactly what he's doing. He's technical. He knows what angles he should come from, where he should put his hands, his feet, everything to a T. And that's what makes him so good. But we're going to see how he is much more in a head-up scheme of him just boom, you know?
And again, it's something. It's not like Oregon was just running zone. Like we've seen this
Yeah,
guy
exactly.
have some good gaps or good reps in a gap scheme, in
Yes.
gap scheme plays. He can do it, and he's still very good at it. It's just in order for him to become the kind of I had him as like a top 7 player in the class if you ignore possession
Yeah,
value,
totally,
right?
totally.
In order for him to become that, you want him to be running inside zone, outside zone. You want him going out and blocking on jailbreak screen passes and doing all that stuff. And the fact is, not every offense is going to maximize that. And I still think he's going to be like a great player. I just don't know if he's
I
going to
think
be
he's
this
gonna be a great
world
player.
breaker that people like me and I know some other people really expect him to be, unless you're running a lot of inside zone and a lot
And
of
I keep
outside zone.
using the term not a, like I want everybody to realize real quick. I think Jackson Powers Johnson is a very athletic player, super
Yeah,
athletic player.
super athletic.
It's just like from a strength standpoint, almost of like,
Mm-hmm.
can he run these gap schemes consistently and be used? And I think he can. We'll have to see.
Yeah, he isn't. He's more of a Jason Kelsey
Yes.
than
Yes.
a Travis Frederick, right? That's what he is. He's someone that could be a little bit undersized, a little bit, but he's gonna go out there and he's gonna make some insane, like, how the heck you're telling me he got up to Fred Warner that quickly? What the hell? Like,
Yes.
he's gonna go out there and do that. Meanwhile, in a gap scheme, it's gonna be, oh, he held his block and did a good job, right? The defender didn't make the tackle and he got him out of the gap, but then we're over here looking at inside zone and he's single-handedly the reason that play worked. Like,
Yes,
it's a big
exactly.
difference, right?
It's a big difference, and I'm glad you used the Jason Kelsey because again, it all comes back to that technique that Power Johnson has because it's so refined, so very refined for a player his age. And now we'll move to the actual center. Good, we're talking about he's playing left guard right now, and again, he will for the foreseeable future. Andre James is a good center. He's a good center, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the entire center through right tackle, it's a bunch of names that's like, why do I never hear about that one much? And then you watch the film, it's like, hey, these guys carve some lanes open, man.
Mm-hmm. Especially the right guard.
Yeah. Andre James is one of them. I feel like he's a guy. Again, these guys play so tough, and they move, like, they'll get their hands on you, and they'll move their feet, really start chopping, and they'll get a forward push. And that's all you ask for on a gap scheme, okay? That's all you ask for on any run blocking scheme, really. Mm-hmm. You are getting guys in front of guys, and those guys are moving guys. That's what O-line play is, baby. And that's what these guys do.
Yes, it is. And next we'll go to Dylan Parham, who I love Dylan Parham. Mm-hmm. I liked him coming out of Memphis, and he has just gotten – he's a guy that came out with a lot of positional versatility. He's played center for him. I think he's even played a little tackle for him. He's played guard, and now he's settling at right guard. And this is where I think his best spot on the offensive line is. He is a people mover, man. He is a thumper in the run game. He's good in pass protection. I think he's one of the more underrated offensive linemen in the league. Again, a name you look at and you don't think he's a superstar, and he's not a superstar yet, but he's really, really good offensive lineman that you are very happy to be at the right guard spot. And now we'll move to the right tackle spot. Actually, no. Do you have anything you have to say about Parham real quick?
No. I think you hit the nail on the head there.
And then we'll go to right tackle spot, which I think is unequivocally the weakest part of this offensive line right now. And then I say weakest because this offensive line's really good all over the place.
And that's why I'm agreeing. But I do want to say with Munford, the thing with him, the only reason I think people look at him as a weakness or as the weakest spot, as the weakest link, is because we just haven't seen it as much, right? He doesn't have the sample size that these other guys have because he's been a rotational player for so long. But, I mean, you watch his film and you're like, yeah, this guy's a starter. Like, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He gets his back towards the gap that the running back is going to be running through while he's engaged with the lineman, right? He's consistently walling guys off of the play. And then when he needs to get a forward push, he does it. Like, he's just a consistent guy that we haven't seen long enough, I would say is the thing. And that's why he's kind of a question mark.
And that's why he's a question mark. I think he could be just fine in this scheme. He's a people mover as well. He was a highly thought of player for a little bit there when he was at Ohio State. Like, people thought of him as like a borderline first round pick for a long time. And then I forget if it was injury or it was just because of play. There's just a big fall off there. And he's a good athlete at tackle, which you love to see. He's got great size, great length. I'm excited to see him in the more full-time role. And even if he's not great, having a guy like DJ Glaze, who they picked in the third round, I think could also play some offensive linemen at a decently high level at right tackle. Maybe not as much as Munford right now. I wouldn't call him a starter yet, but I liked him enough. I think in the right scheme, he could totally be a starting right tackle. So I'm not, while it's the weakest link of this offensive line, it's not something I'm overly worried about.
Correct. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Again, that entire right side is names that you look at, and if you're unfamiliar with the Raiders and their film, you're like, oh yeah, these names don't really ring a bell. But I'm telling you, you watch the All-22 film, you struggle to see a single one of these guys as a weak spot.
Exactly.
It's one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. It truly is like
It's one of the, yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
it's definitely one of the most complete, and I would say it's one of the most high caliber. It's just
Yeah.
how does Jackson Powers Johnson look in a gap scheme? I would say that's my biggest question.
Probably.
Him
And
and
like
Munford.
I kind of have no doubt that he's gonna look good. It's just a matter of how good is he gonna
Yeah,
look,
exactly.
because there's a high upside that like when if this was in a zone scheme, I'm sitting here like, okay, you're good. Like this is a high
Oh
level
yeah.
start.
Oh
This
yeah.
is
If it was a zone scheme, I'm expecting him to become at least a Pro Bowler year one. Right.
like he's really. It's just we don't. He didn't do it a ton at Oregon. I wonder strength wise how he does in a gap scheme. We're gonna have to see. So,
Yeah.
but overall, it's a very intriguing. This is an offense that also has a lot of variance. If the
Yeah.
quarterback is good and Luke Getsy isn't awful, this could be a very, very, very
Mhm.
good offense. There's also a world where Luke Getsy's bad and the quarterback doesn't hit, and this offense. Well, I don't think it could ever be like bad
Mhm.
because there is a lot of good here. It could be pretty below average. It can
Yeah.
be because it's bad at two very important spots: your play caller and your quarterback. If it's bad.
I also think it's worth mentioning the depth, specifically on the offensive line. Other than DJ Glaze, I don't think they have anyone where it's like, oh shit, if someone gets hurt, they're fine throwing that guy out there. Like I struggle to look at that. Like Andreas Pete as the backup left tackle, but
Yeah.
again, very few offensive lines have 5 guys, let alone have 6. Right.
Exactly.
So I don't want to complain about that too much. I just want to mention that could really be what hurts him. But again, it's not
And,
really something that we mentioned in the past. So are we really at that point where now we start critiquing the team's depth? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
depth is of course important, but now, I mean, we're getting to the teams where the offensive lines are actually getting complete. You know, me and you, we can't be too positive. We got to find something to criticize. So that's probably what we're going to start pointing out now. But yeah,
All right.
that's how I look at it. Let's talk about these offensive superlatives, though. Start off with
All
the
right.
offensive player of the year. Who do you have here?
Offensive player of the year, I'm going to go with Colton Miller. I think the running game is going to be a huge, huge part of this offense. And I'm picking the best offensive lineman on this offensive line. I think that you could go a lot of the skill positions here. Absolutely. But I do think this team wants to run the football. And Zamir White came to mind as well. But I wanted to kind of point towards this offensive line, and I picked the best.
Yeah, I think Zamir White will be the most productive player here. But I wouldn't say he's the offensive player of the year. I would say the offensive player of the year is the player that is not single-handedly, but going to be the main reason that they could still throw the ball despite the quarterback play not being great, despite the offensive coordinator not being overly imaginative. I think Devontae Adams, right?
Totally fine.
You got to throw it to someone, and you got to get that passing game going somehow. Even if you're only throwing it 20 times a game, you got to be able to throw the ball efficiently, and you got to get the most out of those 20 plays. Devontae Adams, I think, will really help elevate the QB play.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And offensive rookie of the year, I mean, I think it's easy for me.
Is it?
I think there's 2 guys, of course, but I'm going to take the generational tight end prospect who's going to be on the field almost all the time, just like Powers Johnson will be, believe me. But Brock Bowers is going to be a huge reason why this offense is really good, if it's really good.
I love Bowers. I just don't have faith in how Getsy is going to utilize him. I'm going with JPJ.
That's fine. That's a fine pick.
I think they're gonna be running a decent amount of inside zone. I still 100% think that's going to be the case. And when they do, he's going to do his job. He's going to do it well. And I think they might incorporate some stuff to really get him out. Again, I don't really have faith in the OC, but I think you almost have to be brain dead not to incorporate some stuff to get JPJ out in space, right?
Yeah.
The same way you would have to be brain dead to not maximize Brock Bowers' talent. But again, we'll see. I'm going Jackson Powers Johnson here.
Fine by me. Let's move on from the offense.
Well, no. Do you have your X Factor or 12th man here?
Oh, yeah. My 12th man is going to be Michael Mayer. It's tough. Oh, that's so tough. I want it to be one of the... Can I say the tight ends? Can I say the tight ends is the 12th man?
I don't know. No, because we're agreeing 12 personnel is their base, right? We're agreeing if we were to look at the snap counts at the end of the season...
Actually,
right?
okay, you know who my 12th man is going to be? My 12th man, I've changed it. It's going to be Jakob Johnson.
It's going to be Jakob. I think that's a good pick.
Jakob Johnson's my 12th man. Because I think they are going to run a lot of fullback, but it's the NFL. You can't always run the fullback, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And when he does come in, he's going to do great things. So
yeah.
I'm going to Jakob Johnson.
I agree. How could I not, right? For me, that's why I asked earlier, do we see 12 as their base or do we see 21 as their base? I think when we look at the top 11 players in terms of snap percentage next year, I think the top 11 players are going to be, we know the top 10. It's just, I don't think Trey Tucker is going to be the 11th. Is it going to be Jakob Johnson, or is it going to be, who do we even think starts between Mayer and Brock Bowers? Who do we think gets more of that?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know. I truly don't think you're going to see a lot of plays without two of them on the field.
That's so we think that those are going to be their top 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
so. That makes Jakob the 12th. So then I say Jakob. If we were to say they run more 21 personnel and Jakob is higher than, I don't know, Michael Mayer, then Michael Mayer would be my 12th man. It really depends on that. And I like how neither of us said Trey Tucker. So, do you have your X Factor here?
No, my X Factor's on defense.
I think I know who your X Factor is, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
My X Factor, I think, is a pretty good one. I think he's going to have a good season. But I think if he could really become an elevator instead of just a ball carrier behind the guys, I think Zamir White, if he could go out and become like a stud, I think then they're really in a spot. Because then you don't have to rely on Aiden O'Connell much, right?
No. And again, I almost picked Aiden O'Connell as my
X Factor. I was thinking someone would have.
Yeah, I almost picked him, but I do, and don't get me wrong, I think O'Connell's going to put together a good season.
Mm-hmm.
I just there's somebody on defense where I'm like, if he's good, this defense is going to be good. Yeah, so let's keep it going. To this defense now, Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator, he's fantastic. I really like Patrick Graham. Tell me what you like about him.
Well, let's start with just the scheme alone, right? The scheme is a lot of soft coverage. That's how this defense works. It's a 4-2 base, it seems. They're going to run a lot of cover 2, and they're going to run some disguised cover 3. Right? That's something they really like to do. They have 2 high safeties very often, and sometimes the safeties will rotate down, allowing them to run cover 3, or they'll just shift both safeties over and then have a cornerback drop into the other third. That's very often how they run it, but they like to run their cover 3. They like to run their Tampa 2. That's how this works. It's a soft zone defense. Not reinventing the wheel, once again, but when you run a defense like that, you got to coach your guys up well. And you watch this team play, and it's very clear. These guys, and a lot of them were kind of rejects. This is like the island of misfit toys of defense, really. No, it is. I mean, we'll get through the names. It absolutely is. And I think the reason they look so good is because all of them, I mean, you could tell they have a passion for this game, right? You could absolutely tell. And all of them, you could tell, are just coached so well, right? They all understand the route concepts that they're facing off against, and as a result, they know how to settle in their zones against it, right? You see a guy like Travis Kelce, who normally picks apart zone coverage. You would think the Raiders can't go ahead and beat the Chiefs then. Single-handedly, Travis Kelce will beat the Raiders. But when you got guys that understand their zone coverage scheme well enough, they also understand how to run zone against the teams that are good at beating zone. And they understand the little kicks that they have to make. And that's how you beat up a team like the Chiefs, right? Convince them that they know how to beat you, and then beat their way of beating you. I mean, it's really that simple, right? What if Superman was not allergic to kryptonite, right? What about that, right? That's how this Raiders team is playing. They are playing a really soft zone defense, and when you start sending certain passing concepts at them that are supposed to beat up on zone coverage, They just understand how you're going to try and attack them, and they are going to make the proper adjustments. And that's
very, very adaptable, very flexible.
Exactly.
Zone coverage.
And it's because of how well coached these guys are. And I think that's the advantage. When you really are only running Tampa 2 and cover 3, that gives you more time to focus on Tampa 2 and cover 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the big thing here. I think that's how Patrick Graham wants this defense to be. He wants them to be predictable. Because he doesn't care if you know what they're going to do. Because they have the little kicks.
Because they can do it
out.
really well.
Exactly.
They can do it really well.
Yeah.
And let's move to this defensive line, which I'm just so excited to talk about. Max Crosby highlights this team. Max Crosby is one of the 3 best edge rushers in football, I would say. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you agree, but
I mean, I would have to think. I definitely think he's in the discussion.
I'm thinking Myles Garrett at 1. I'm thinking Micah Parsons at 2.
I would put Crosby ahead personally.
That's fine. Then I would put Parsons at 3, Crosby at 2. And that's kind of where I'd do it.
Yeah.
I don't know who I'd put above him.
Yeah.
I'm not putting TJ Watt. Sorry, Steelers fans.
Watson, I think so. We'll get to the Steelers when we get to the Steelers.
Yeah, we'll get to the Steelers when we get to the Steelers.
But Watt, I think I'm willing to put him closer in that discussion.
I think it's close. Yeah. I'm not saying he's like
bad. Listen, the point is Crosby. There's a reason he was in Defensive Player of the Year conversations. Okay, what he does, he might not be the pass rusher that a Micah Parsons is, or even a TJ Watt is, but what he does as a run defender, he is the best run defending edge in football.
Absolutely,
I feel very comfortable saying that.
Without a doubt.
And I think that's really how he shines, right? And now that he has a...
And before people get the wrong idea real quick, Max Crosby's still a really good pass rusher, by the way. Max
yeah. Oh, my God.
Really
absolutely.
Good pass rusher.
And he has moves in his bag. I mean, he's someone... more than anything...
That long arm.
Oh, yeah, the long arm works. But more than anything, it's the motor.
Yes.
That's...
effort.
The
Raider way.
Exactly. The Raider way. Exactly. Yeah. And that's how you make it as a 4th rounder in this league, right? That's how you become one of the best players in the league when you were drafted in round 4. Mm-hmm. You make it because you just work harder. You know? And you're able to see on every given snap, he's going through guys and then ripping moves to get past other guys. He goes through 3 blockers before a single linebacker gets past 1. And he makes the tackle on the line of scrimmage. Like, he's crazy, man. He is unfazed by blockers.
And he is on the field. He's doing that, and he's on the field at all times.
All times.
He doesn't come off.
And that, I think, is a separator between him and a Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons is the most dominant defender when he's on the field. The only thing is, he rotates. He does. Micah Parsons is not just a 3rd down pass rusher, but they try and make sure he's always ready to go on 3rd downs, and because of that, they have to take him out on some 1st and 2nd downs.
Yeah,
Max Crosby is always on the field.
You're sitting there. Sitting
there. You're always on the field, and he doesn't complain. He doesn't care. In fact, he wants to be there.
The play doesn't fall off either.
Exactly. He's a robot.
Amazing.
He's a robot. Great player, and now they have Christian Wilkins right next to him. I mean, come on.
Dolphins legend Christian Wilkins.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's
just a fantastic run defender. Yeah. Again, another guy who. Well, the difference than Crosby, I don't think Christian Wilkins is super effective as a pass rusher. He's good, but his game is a run defender, and he's a really, really comically good.
And he's not just a gap-filling run defender. Let me just make that clear. He's someone that is going to disengage and make tackles behind the line of scrimmage. Because here's the thing about Wilkins, he has some shimmy to him, man. Mm-hmm. He has some shimmy. He's pretty good with hidden hezzies as an interior guy who's that big. Like, he's a dangerous, dangerous player. When you have the big guys that are freak athletes, those are the scariest defensive linemen.
Yes, and something I really want to mention with Wilkins, because this was the case when he was in Miami, he's a phenomenal leader. What he brings to a locker room is amazing, and bringing him into this already really good culture where the team loves each other and loves everybody, and bringing in a guy like Christian Wilkins, I can imagine how that locker room is. It's good. It's good vibes on that.
And I think they brought him in not to elevate the culture, but because they know he's a fit in the culture.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And then complimentary to him, that is my question. Who do you think is going to be the other interior?
Tyree Wilson, for the most part.
The other interior.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think on passing downs or 3rd down, Tyree Wilson's probably going to play a lot of defensive tackle. I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be used as a 3rd down defensive tackle a lot. But on most downs, I think you'll see a rotation of Adam Butler, and I think you'll see a rotation of John Jenkins and Byron Young. I think John Jenkins is probably the guy you're going to see most of the time.
I was thinking Byron Young.
Both are good. I'm not sitting here. I'm not going to argue with you on that. I don't think any is overly amazing, but I think it's a good.
I think the thing with Byron Young more than anything is just the upside. Yeah. I think with him being, we talked about it in the last episode we did, which is up on Dino's channel. Definitely check it out with the Buccaneers, right? When you have a Vita Vea who can just eat up defenders, you want to take advantage of the fact that he's always going to demand an double team and have someone that's really good at beating single teams, although he might be really weak against double teams. I think that's kind of what Byron Young does because he's this really technically sound, speedy interior guy. Yeah. Someone that could complement a Christian Wilkins.
That'd be great. I do think the team's going to be we want to stop the run, though. I think that's going to be a lot of this mindset. We really want to stop the run, and with that's what they're shaping up to be. And John Jenkins is good at that. So then we move to the other edge rusher, and it's cool because there's two guys here. Malcolm Kuntz was good last year.
He was a good football player. Yeah,
he was a good football player next year. And then, so I think he's going to get a lot of the third down edge rusher stuff. And then, because I think Tyree Wilson, their first round, I'll say this: a lot of people who follow me know this. I was really, really high on Tyree Wilson.
I've talked to a lot of people that are really high on
I had him very similar grades on Will Anderson and him as players. I was very high on him. And last year, I think people really overrate how much he struggled. We're talking about a guy who missed all the training camp. He wasn't part of this team for training camp. And you're talking about a guy who is labeled as more of a project player coming in and playing a lot of football for him. And that's not a great recipe for success, but as this season went along, he got better and better and better and better. And now with a full training camp, with a defensive line that every team's going to have to say, okay, we have to give Tyree Wilson one-on-one coverage. We cannot look elsewhere. I think he's going to be really good. I'm excited to watch him as an edge rusher. And again, as already mentioned, as a pass rushing defensive tackle, I think he's going to be on the interior a lot this season because he's big enough to do that. Yeah. He's a big dude. Yeah.
He has all those tools. If he can learn to work the long arm like Max Crosby has it, oh my goodness.
And imagine a world where it's Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, Tyree Wilson on the interior, and Malcolm Kuntz on the edge on a 3rd and 10. And you're like, that's scary. That's really scary.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, he has the upside, Tyree Wilson, without a doubt. There's no question about that. It's just a question of when will he hit it.
Exactly.
I'm excited to talk about this linebacker room, though. The guys behind it. We think it's going to be a 4-2, right?
Yep.
And I want to talk about the guy who has been the signal caller. I want to talk about a guy who I can make a very strong argument for being the most underrated player in football.
So underrated, man.
Yeah, Robert Spillane.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad we feel the same. Robert Spillane was fantastic last year.
He was fantastic. And I think he's really smart. Really smart player. You could tell he has that kind of knack for, it's going this way. And you see him, making the calls for the defense. But I think more than anything, and we even saw it back when he was playing on Pittsburgh, there's one specific play I think encapsulates him as a football player more than anything when he played in Pittsburgh. It was a goal line carry for Derrick Henry. Keep in mind, this is prime
I know exactly
Derrick
what
Henry.
You're talking about.
This is prime Derrick Henry. And this guy fires in between the guard and the center and meets him straight. He didn't get blocked. He did not get blocked. He was the read player. He was the player that... Not even the read player. He was the player that
you
Arthur
typically
Smith
leave some guys.
Arthur Smith literally said,
Derrick Henry's back there.
Derrick Henry, we trust that you'll beat this guy. We trust you will fall forward through this guy. All you got to do is get a yard. Robert Spillane and him meet each other straight on the line of scrimmage. It was a hell of a collision. Derrick Henry fell backwards.
Yep.
You don't see that. Keep in mind, Derrick Henry got his running start. He was lowering his shoulder. And Robert Spillane made Derrick Henry fall backwards. That doesn't happen. This is prime Derrick Henry. And at the time, Robert Spillane was kind of like a rotational linebacker.
If I believe, this was when the Pittsburgh was having those they were having to dig deep into their
Yeah.
linebacker depth chart because everyone was getting injured.
Yeah,
And Robert
exactly.
Spillane was just one of those guys they pulled out, and he was good.
Yeah, and let me tell you right now, he suffered like something with his dome in that same play. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think he got like concussion check that next play. I think he came back out on the field. But
Right.
yeah, it was an insane collision. And that encapsulates so much of who he is as a football player because when he sees runs hit the hole, when he sees running backs hit the hole, he wants to meet them there. He embraces that contact. And I think when you have a player that's that smart and plays that fearless, I mean, come on, that's how great things happen. And that is, like you said, the Raider way.
I was gonna say this is the Raider way. Have you ever met a more Raiders linebacker than Robert Spillane?
And that's exactly how Antonio Pierce used to play. So, of course, he loves it. And he's also a pretty good coverage guy, too. So it's just a really, really good football player. I really like him a lot.
The guy next to him, I think Divine Diablo is going to start the season there. I don't love Divine Diablo as a player. I think he's a good coverage guy.
They have 4 guys.
They have 4 guys. I was going to say, I really like Tommy Eichenberg. I think he's a good fit for this scheme.
He's a really high floor player.
Yes. And you want to talk about a guy that invites contact? Tommy Eichenberg does.
Well, you know who he reminds me of? Another former Raider, although no one remembers him as a Raider. He reminds me of Blake Martinez a lot, Tommy Eichenberg. Someone that, he's not going to be a playmaker.
No.
But he'll shed blocks. He'll stay, a solid 3 yards away from the line of scrimmage. And when he gets his hands on you, when he wraps his arms around you, you're going down. Right? That's all he is. I don't think he is someone that can do anything in man coverage. That was like my big gripe with him. But Antonio Pierce isn't running man coverage, so he doesn't care. And he's another smart football player. Like, he is really similar to Robert Spillane. Really similar.
Yes, very similar.
So maybe that's part of why they don't want him out there. Diablo, the good thing with Divine Diablo is he covers so much space. And when you're trying to run Tampa 2, it's really good to have a rangy linebacker like that.
For those who don't know, Diablo was a converted safety for Virginia Tech. Like, he was used to play safety.
Yeah,
so,
but don't get it twisted. He could still hit. Like, he could still
hit.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's that great of a like reading out the run.
Yeah, you're right.
Play and all
you're
that
definitely
stuff.
right.
So, but when Spillane's out there, maybe
it's like the second and long situations they make those substitutions. I can see it being a rotation.
And Luke Masterson can do it too.
Yeah, Masterson I think is a good balance of both worlds. He was a good football player for them last year.
Absolutely.
Again, this is a good linebacker room. Like, they have 4 guys that I like. Okay. I completely agree. I think Diablo more than anything. He's there to play like that Tampa 2 kind of rangy linebacker spot. And then Eichenberg, really similar to Spillane. Masterson is kind of a best of both worlds situation. That's how I see that linebacker situation.
Right.
Spillane is obviously the best one.
Yeah. So, really, really good front 7. Now we'll go to the secondary. Well, not as great. I still think it's good. I still think it's a good secondary. It's a pretty good secondary.
Again, it's because of how well coached they are, right?
Yes.
These guys don't really make mistakes, is the thing. I want to start with the safeties here.
Fine by me. Go ahead.
It's just Epps and Moehrig are such a great duo who rotate down and play perfectly fine when they rotate down. They're both strong, hard hitters, which it feels like every Raiders defender is. Truly.
For the Raiders, play, buddy.
Yeah. But then they can also play up high and do a lot up there. So, when you have 2 high safeties a lot of the time, but you can rotate them down, that gives you so much versatility as a defense. And when you only run those 2 coverage concepts, you have to be able to mix up the looks of which you're running it. Or kind of, and the variations of which you're running it. And 2 guys that can rotate down while also having the ability to play high safety, that really allows you to run a cover 3, but with one of the safeties buzzing down, and then follow that up with a Tampa 2 where both safeties are up high. Like, you really like being able to do that.
And I'll be the first to admit, when they gave Epps that contract, I wasn't moved. I wasn't a huge fan of Epps in Philly, and I didn't think if he'd be a good fit otherwise, but he's proven me wrong. And I think I think Moehrig's really underrated player. People forget, like, he was supposed to be a first-round pick And then I remember him falling into the second round, and that was the year they took Alex Leatherwood. I remember that. And you're like, oh, man. But at least they made up for it.
Mayock was not very good at drafting.
No.
There
But
no
at least he
doubt
got
about that.
Merrick. At least he got Merrick.
Mm-hmm.
And he's turned into a really good safety.
Both of them, especially Epps, lays the wood, man.
Yeah. But I want to talk about even like the backups. Isaiah Polamalu. I believe he's actually related to Troy Polamalu, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've read that somewhere. I might be wrong. Sorry if I'm wrong. I feel like let me fact check that real quick. But I remember reading that somewhere.
Fact checking.
Isaiah, I want to make sure I get that right.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Polamalu has a relative somewhere in the league. I remember hearing that. It might be him.
It might be him. Nephew, yes, he's Troy Polamalu's nephew. I was right. I'm not just. Yeah. Okay. So that's and he's like hard hitting safety kind of guy. And Chris Smith, I liked him last year coming out of Georgia. I was a big Chris Smith guy. Having him as depth at safety is awesome. So I'm excited. I'm excited about the safety room. Now we get to the cornerbacks, who not a ton of depth, but I like their starters a lot. Well, not one of them, but I think the other two starters are like Jack Jones is awesome. Jack Jones is a good cornerback, man. He was really good for this Raiders team. One of the maybe the most underrated free agent signing last year when they did get him. Like, he was fantastic. And picks off, we all know, does the most Raiders thing ever, picks off Patrick Mahomes, fakes hands it to a child, and then takes it back. And
apparently, I don't know if you heard this. I don't know if it's true. His agent might have just told him to say this. Apparently, someone else was trying to grab the ball, and that's why he did it.
I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Yeah, the thing is, he's a Raider.
I saw the clip.
Yeah, he's a Raider, so I can't believe it. Raiders aren't exactly known for their off-the-field reputation.
True. But and Jack Jones is one of those guys who, like, was really good with the Patriots when he played. And then he had that off-the-field issue. And now you're hoping he can focus his play on the field and not have any of those issues, because he's a really good player, and he fits the scheme really well. Yeah,
and he could also play man. He's one of the few guys where I'm like, I like him as a man defender.
A lot.
Now, I don't think they're going to take advantage of that nearly ever, but he can play man coverage.
If need be, he can be. Yeah. Exactly. Then there's Nate Hobbs in the nickel, which I'm very happy. He has played outside corner before. He can do it. He's awesome. He's a really good nickel corner. Like, he's awesome.
And I think it's because he's their best
run defender.
He's their best tackling defender.
Yes.
Best
tackling secondary by a lot. Yeah. Good in coverage, can play man, good, smart in zone. You're happy about who you got there. And then at the right cornerback spot is where it kind of like, I didn't love Jacorian Bennett in last year's draft, and last year didn't like him on tape either. So not super excited. You could see Brandon Faison come in and do that. I also don't really like him. Now, DeCamerion Richardson, the rookie they drafted this year, I don't think he starts this season, but he's a really athletic player, and he's a guy who could be good. Like he's like in this zone scheme, he fits it well, and he's got the athleticism to really take advantage of getting a pick or breaking on a ball. So I'm not super worried about it.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement in the sense that this is their weak spot. I definitely am worried about it, but again, with them running this much cover 3 and this much soft zone coverage, it's not like you take advantage of it. Okay, cool, you got 5 yards, right? Yeah, it's not the end of the world.
It's not like this is the Saints, and if they had a Jacorian Bennett at the right slot corner,
exactly,
at the right corner. This is a zone coverage scheme that you're giving up small plays.
So it's not the end of the world. I definitely agree. You have your X factor on this side of the ball. Can I guess who it is?
You're more than welcome to.
Tyree Wilson?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I figured.
And if he lives up to his draft pedigree and how good I think he can be, this defensive line could be the best in the league type thing. This defensive line could be the best in football.
I absolutely get it. Now, defensive player of the year, who do you have?
It's so hard not to pick Max. It's Max Crosby.
I want to say Max Crosby, and that probably is the answer, but I feel like the fact that Christian Wilkins is here now, and the fact that we could say, oh, hey, the Raiders' defense, although it was really good last year and everyone just slept on it because it was only good towards the end of the season, People are going to look at the Raiders' defense last year and look at the Raiders' defense this year, and they're going to give Christian Wilkins all that credit.
Yeah.
Do I think that's right? No. But I think because, I can't believe I'm saying this, because in the NFL honors, they kind of consider it a narrative award. I'm kind of letting it play the role of a narrative award here, and I'm going to go Christian Wilkins.
That's fine. That's fine. I love giving love to my Dolphins legend, Christian Wilkins. But now let's move to the special. Oh, wait, no. First, defensive rookie.
I think we have the same guy.
Tommy Eichenberg. Right?
Tommy Eichenberg, yeah.
Right.
You could maybe say Richardson.
It depends.
Maybe.
If he plays, then there's a chance. But,
Yeah.
we don't know if he's going to be on the field early. He's much more of, athlete that you're hoping to turn into a good player someday.
Exactly. So now special teams, and this is probably the best collection of a kicker and a punter we've had yet.
Yeah, definitely.
AJ Cole is
really good.
Workhorse. I mean, he is a workhorse punter.
Yes.
Right. He had 75 punts last year.
Did he really? That's
yeah.
a lot. That's
for
a lot.
3,783 yards.
Oh
I'm going to do the math for you right now. He still averaged 50.4 yards per punt, despite having such an insane volume of punts. That's the 5th most in the NFL.
Jesus.
Again, 75 punts is insanity to have that many.
I didn't realize they had that many punts.
Yeah,
that leads the league, I'd assume.
Oh,
right? Yeah.
So, again, we're talking, hey, we really like this defense. If only the offense we could rely on just as much. It really helps you win those low-scoring games when you have a punter doing that. And he can do it 75 times in a season. And then their kicker will allow them...
Carlson.
Yeah, he can allow them to score...
He's a stud.
...from decently far away. Yeah. He hit 10 40-plus yarders last year.
He's a stud. Stud, man.
And he has the leg.
If Packers fans are sitting here, if only his brother was a stud.
Very fair, very fair. Now, returners. It has 2 guys here that I think are interesting, but I don't really think they'd be my picks. Trey Tucker and Amir Abdullah are listed as the returners on Orlab.
Well, Trey Tucker did it a lot in college.
Yeah.
It's just how much do they value Trey Tucker's? Did they want him on the field?
And we agree that he's not going to be in their top 11 in terms of snap percentage. So maybe would you? I just think there's better names. Is my thing.
I don't know. Trey Tucker's a really good returner in college. I was a big fan of him in college. But yeah, no, there are other names here. You go ahead and say them.
I mean, I was thinking Richardson, the corner.
He could totally do it too.
That was where I was leaning, just because Tucker can do it, and I don't think he'll be bad at it. And I think he definitely gets on one side. I just don't know if I'd go as far as to list him as a punt and kick returner.
Oh yeah, maybe not both. Definitely not.
That's kind of where I feel here, but maybe I'm sleeping on him.
And Richardson has the athleticism to do that. Absolutely.
And that's exactly what I mean. I think, especially Richardson, I don't think is going to be on the field much this year.
Yes.
So for me, that's part of it. But again, Tucker, I think, can do a really good job. Don't get me wrong. I just think Richardson is kind of my go-to name here. Amir Abdullah obviously would do a good job in theory if they were to put him out there. In terms of blockers, of course, you got to go the tight ends. I don't think Mayer or Bowers, although they'll do a good job if they do put him out there, I don't think they're gonna put him out there.
They won't. They're too important to this offense.
But they do have 2 more tight ends after that in Ryan Harrison and Zach Gentry, who is a very good blocker.
Jakob Johnson is going to be on special teams as a blocker.
For sure.
He's going to obliterate people.
Yeah.
Both linebackers, 3 of the linebackers might I doubt Diablo does. Maybe on a gunner if they want him to, or just the tackler like that. But Masterson and Tommy Eichenberg should be on the blocking team.
No, I definitely agree with you there. I think this is mainly because of the kickers and punters. I think really good special team unit. Again, I like Trey Tucker. I think most teams would feel honored to have him as their best kick returner.
Yeah.
But I just think they have a better guy.
That's fine.
So yeah, that's where I'm leaning here. But they look at the schedule, and it's not a great one. It's a tough one, man. It is
tough.
It's tough, and I think the worst thing about it, their toughest opponents they play on the road, right? when they have an easy game, those are the ones at home, which sucks,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's look at this. We have the floor as listen. We have a wide difference in terms of where this team
Wide.
can be and where this team, has the ability to be.
Right.
3-14 as the floor. Ceiling is 10-7, so that's a big difference. I overall their record, I am not huge. I'm not huge. I have them 7-10, which again, they're a better team than that. I just think they're going to be that team that plays teams really tight and kind of ruins their week because they would like to have an easy opponent, but instead they play against an opponent that just beats them up all game, and the other team still wins, but they didn't want it to be that tough. And I think this is going to be a team that looks really good in terms of points differential, but in terms of wins and losses, I don't think they're going to look great.
I think this is a team that's going to be like in the playoff hunt for such a long time, and then kind of lose gas at the end of the season for it. I think it's going 8-9. 8-9 is my pick for it.
Okay, so once again, we're one game apart from each other. But although 8 and 9 sounds so much more positive,
It's because there's not a double-digit number there.
Yeah. So
but let's look at the schedule.
Yeah, starts with week 1 in
Raiders and Chargers
LA.
in LA. I think the Raiders can win this game, 100%.
Oh yeah, no, I don't disagree. Especially that Chargers run defense has been bad for a while. Now we'll see how it looks under Minter. Maybe it won't be that way anymore. Should be really interesting. I think this will be a good test for the Chargers. I think the Raiders can stay in their comfort zone, though. Yeah. Which is why they're at an advantage here. But then going into Baltimore.
It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah.
We'll see how they do, how this defense is without McDonald. I think that's something we have to keep in mind with these Ravens teams.
Yeah, that's true. But I think the really tough thing here is Raiders' ability to run the ball is going to be hurt a lot because of Madubuike, right? And because that Ravens front is pretty damn good against the run, if they can't get the running game going, and then we know that offense is going to be scoring because they have Lamar Jackson.
But this is also where it brings up the sense of Brock Bowers effect. Is Hamilton going to have to man up Brock Bowers the whole game? Type thing, you know what I mean?
That's fair, but I still
would lean Ravens. I would still pick the Ravens.
Yeah, I just don't trust Aiden O'Connell enough to take advantage of that here.
Right.
So I would take Baltimore. But then
Panthers going to the Raiders.
I feel good about the Raiders winning that one.
Browns Raiders will be interesting.
That's a good one because it's two teams with bad quarterbacks, I would say. The game is in Las Vegas, which is obviously a good thing. I think this is where we really see a difference between a coach that knows the X's and O's and a coach that doesn't. I think Stefanski, being the mastermind he is going to take advantage, or is going to be the advantage in this matchup. And I think Cleveland is going to win.
I think that's fine. I think it's going to be a toss-up. I think this is going to be one. I totally imagine this game in Raiders Stadium, Browns Raiders, just like down to the wire type of game is where I see. I think this is a toss-up. I'm fine leading the Browns here, just because I think O'Connell will. Every quarterback struggles against Jim Schwartz in this defense, and Aiden O'Connell's no exception here. So I'm fine leading the Browns there. Raiders Broncos. I feel comfortable taking the Raiders here.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, a rookie quarterback against that pass rush, I think he's going to have problems.
Yeah. Steelers Raiders, again, another close game like the Browns here. But I would lean Raiders in Las Vegas.
This one I can really go either way, man.
Exactly.
I really can. Because the Steelers, they tend to be this team that wins the games that they shouldn't win, but they play down to their competition, and it makes it so much of hell. And by the way, 100% going to be a low-scoring affair. Two teams that want to run the football and play defense.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be 10-7. 10-7.
Yeah. And in a game like that, what makes the difference?
Special teams.
And while I do think the Steelers have definitely focused a lot on getting, the kick returners and they brought in Cordell Patterson, Daniel Carlson, I think, is going to be the advantage here.
Yes.
So I'm taking the Raiders because what would normally be a 10-7 game might end up being a 13-7 game. And that prevents the Steelers from being able to kick a field goal. They have to try and win it. That leads to them needing to leave their comfort zone, rely on their quarterback, throw the ball, and I don't think they win that way.
Right. And then we get Raiders-Rams. And I think this is also another really intriguing game. We got to remember this is a Rams defense without Aaron Donald now. How good is this young defensive line going to be against this ferocious, fierce offensive line in the run game? You know what I mean? And it's also like, how can this Raiders defense stop Sean McVay? So I don't know here.
I think that McVay, he's someone that's seen a lot of defenses like Rams. I think he knows how to pick them apart. I think that the Raiders are going to, even though the Raiders are good at making those adjustments, I still think Sean McVay is going to get the better of him with a veteran like Matthew Stafford. I absolutely think that the Rams win this one, personally.
Okay.
Especially in LA.
It's tough, but again, I'm concerned about how this Rams defense stops this Raiders offense. Like, I don't know. Like, this is not a good front seven for the Rams.
No, I think I disagree. I actually have
maybe not good. Maybe it's kind of an unknown front seven for the Rams.
Sure, but I really
not having Aaron Donald.
I really like the rookies they brought.
I like
in.
Verse. I don't like Fisk.
I think Fisk has a ceiling, and I think with Kobe Turner kind of attracting double teams, that opens stuff up for Fisk potentially.
Sure, I just didn't like Fisk on tape. I thought we'll talk about Fisk when we get to the Rams. We'll talk about Fisk when we get to the Rams. But I have concerns. Like I think it's an unknown, this Rams defensive line. I have faith.
And it also helps that Rams defense has some good linebackers too.
Yeah, so Chiefs Raiders. This is Chiefs going to the Raiders. These games are always close.
Yep.
This is just and it's hard not to pick the Chiefs because spoiler alert, they're up there when it comes to teams on this power ranking. But this is a winnable game for the Raiders. They beat them in Arrowhead.
Yeah, no, the Raiders love giving the Chiefs hell. They do.
Yeah.
I think that's why they brought in Christian Wilkins. And I think that's why they're going to continue to build this team in ways that specifically counter what the Chiefs do. I could absolutely see the Raiders winning this.
Yeah.
And it's at home too. So if they were to split, you would think this is the one that they win.
Exactly.
I could definitely see it. I just think week 8, this was probably where the Chiefs kind of get on the uptick. And then I think they start getting caught sleeping at the wheel like usual in week 13.
We'll see with that one. And then there's Raiders-Bengals. Intriguing matchup because the Bengals team is going to want to run the football a lot. This is a spread offense. You've got a projected starting rookie tackle, Amarius Mims, going up against it.
And it's also worth mentioning that interior offensive line is not very good. Christian Wilkins could have a day here.
And also worth mentioning that the Bengals, while I think they've done a fine job replacing through the draft and
you're going to say the defensive line?
But
yeah, I'm sorry. I have too much confidence in those rookies.
That's fine. I think it's tough to put. DJ Reader is so good as a run defender.
Yeah, well, but I think the guys they brought in, man.
We'll talk about the Bengals
again. Another example. We'll talk about them when we get to them. But I really like this Bengals defensive line. I'm taking Cincy.
I think it's fine. Dolphins Raiders.
This is off a bye week for the Raiders, but Miami is really good at beating the teams that they're better than. That's what they do. They are better than the Raiders. They're going to win.
Broncos Raiders at home. Raiders are going to win this game. That's where I'm
at. I feel good about them beating them both times. I do.
Yeah. Raiders at Arrowhead this late in the season. Now again, we're looking at
Chiefs get caught sleeping at the wheel.
Chiefs get caught sleeping at the wheel, and it's also
Prime
the
Video.
Fact of, like,
it's their own.
It's also the fact of like we're talking about cold weather entering November. Raiders are a team that again want to run the football 30 times. Like, this is totally a winnable game for the Raiders. As good as the Chiefs are, this is one of those games that, like...
They definitely win one of them. The Raiders definitely win at least one, if not two.
Yeah. Then you got Raiders-Bucks, who we talked about in the last video, believe it or not. Who did we pick here? Or did we...
last time, I think we left it up in the air. The game being in Tampa Bay, I mean, that probably is the advantage. Again, it's a tough one. I think both teams match up against each other in an interesting way. The Buccaneers also like to rush a lot. They prioritize defending the run. I think Buccaneers probably win it.
Yeah, then you also have Luke Gadeke against Matt Crosby, who not ideal, but we'll see what happens there. Then Falcons Raiders in Las Vegas. Should be an intriguing matchup. You're talking about a really good run defending team against this Falcons team that wants to run the football. I would take the Raiders here at home.
Yeah, but I also think Atlanta. I feel like it's another McVay disciple, right?
Right.
Running the offense here. I think they have some talent that, even though it's not really a matchup defense, I think Zach Robinson is going to scheme up ways to make it into a matchup type of thing. And it's just 50-50 ball against Drake London. Who's defending that, right? And then you go out there, you get Bijan Robinson the ball in space. I don't know who's going to be able to take the guy down if he's making these elusive plays. I just think the array of talent that Atlanta has, they're going to get to a point in this game where they just rely on their guys versus the Raiders guys. And I think at that point, the great coaching of Antonio Pierce obviously does a good job. And
you're talking X's and O's.
X's and O's. I'm trying to specifically remember the defensive coordinator from Patrick Graham. There we go. I had a brain fart for a second. But Patrick Graham, I think his X's and O's and how he coaches up these players, it's going to get to a point where it matters for a lot of the game, but I think Robinson is going to find a way to really isolate the players and expose the players, not the scheme. And I think that's how he's going to beat them.
We'll see. Jaguars, Raiders in Las Vegas. We'll see. I don't know.
This one, I think Jacksonville is going to go ahead, and they're going to try and throw the ball on them. Like, that's what they want to do. But I think the scheme, I think they could take advantage of a kind of gung-ho quarterback in a Trevor Lawrence. I could see the Raiders winning this one. I feel pretty good about it, actually.
Raiders, Saints, it's in New Orleans, but I think the Raiders match up pretty well.
I don't.
Really?
I think that the Saints... Now, I'm talking about Raiders offense versus Saints defense here.
Okay.
The Saints line up in that 4-3 and they stick to it, right? And I think when they're running a 4-3 like that, it's going to make it tough to run the football. And they have some guys on that defense, especially in that front, that are great at stopping the run. And as a result, I think they're going to force the game into Aiden O'Connell's hands. And I think Aiden O'Connell can get caught sleeping. Right.
It could happen. No, you're absolutely right there. Absolutely right there. Another one's up in the air. Then Chargers, Raiders at home. I feel comfortable saying the Raiders can win that game pretty easily. Not easily, but I mean, it all depends where this Chargers team is at this point in the season.
Yeah,
a lot of these later games all depend. If this Raiders offense is cooking under Luke
if Max Crosby goes down, believe it or not, it's going to hurt their win total.
And if Luke Getsy again is cooking with this Raiders offense, this affects their win total a lot because that swings the games in the Raiders' favor. But it's all very dependent. We're just looking at this roster-wise face value. What are we looking at here?
Yeah. I mean, the thing, too, you got to keep in mind, the Chargers tackle duo, I think they have two guys that could definitely, even though one of them is a rookie, I think they have two guys that could definitely slow down Crosby at least. So that's a good thing here for them. Especially at this point, Joe Alt should be far more accustomed to the league. It should be really interesting seeing Joe Alt in his first start playoff against Max Crosby. But, yeah, this one's tough. I feel like the Chargers and Raiders probably split. I guess the Raiders take this one if the Chargers take the last one.
And that's where we're at with this team. Why don't you sign us off, Pat?
Yeah. Thank you all for watching. I definitely enjoyed this one. It was a fun team to talk about. If you want more of my content, definitely check out the link in the description. I have my podcast link there. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. Leave a like if you enjoyed. And, of course, Dean has his content down there, too. I have his YouTube channel linked down there. He's doing the evens. I'm doing the odds here. So the next episode will be up on his channel. Definitely check that out. And I'll see you all again next time.